Hey everybody, good evening. Thanks for coming out on this wintry night again. I'm always impressed and surprised and honored that folks come out. Welcome to Fishtrap Fireside, and welcome to all you folks who are watching Fishtrap Fireside online, either at Fishtrap's website or on the YouTube channel. We're happy to have you here too. Fishtrap Fireside, as many of you know, is our monthly reading series for local Wallowa County folks to read and share their work. And every month we get a variety of pack of what folks living here are thinking about and writing down. It's always a blast. This one, for the past, 7, 8, 9 years, we've taken the first, the Fireside in March to celebrate Women's History Month. Women's History Month commemorates and encourages the study, observance, and celebration of the vital role of women in American history. And so each time we kind of try to find readers from different generations, from different life experiences, different genres, and this year is no different. Tonight's featured readers are, and give them a round of applause for showing up and doing this, Kathleen "Kat" Johnson. That's right. And to my left, Randi Movich. And just sliding hot into the county, Sarah Petrillo. This month's Fireside is sponsored by the Nature Conservancy, which is pretty cool. I don't know how many of you spend quality time out on the Wallowa Prairie Nature Preserve. It's a beautiful place. The wildflowers will be popping before we know it. And also that's the location of Fishtrap's June outpost on the Wallowa Prairie program, which always brings people to spend a week onto the prairie, into the natural world, and give them a chance to write about it. Okay, here's how, thanks TNC. Here's how Fishtrap Fireside works. Each month we have 3 featured readers, and they get about 10 minutes to do whatever that they want. And then afterwards, we have a little intermission where you can visit with people, where you can go up to Kat and say, I loved your piece, things like that. And refill your glass, visit with people, and then afterwards we have an open mic section. And these are short, 5-minute or less readings of just folks who just showed up tonight and said, I think I'll try something out. And it's been a variety pack of anything, from something people prepared, to something that people scribbled down while they were sitting through the readings, to something that they saw. One time somebody just had a button with a slogan on it and came up and read what was on the button. I thought that was pretty cool. Still have yet somebody to come up and do stand-up. I'm waiting for that one. I'm not kidding, Beth. And so if you, we still have a couple spots left on the open mic list. Right now we have 3 people signed up, and then we go off into the night. So let's get the show started. You ready? Yep. Yeah, man. Kathleen, or Kat Johnson, was born and raised in Colorado. After earning her BS in English, she taught 4th grade for a time, but quit to become a stay-at-home mom and follow her first husband as his career took them to New Jersey, California, Georgia, Massachusetts, before choosing to make Oregon home. Kat has been a substitute teacher, library aide, a scout leader, an EMT, and trusty companion to cats, dogs, ducks, goats, and horses. In her 30s, she began a new career as a registered nurse, starting in critical care, but eventually specializing in geriatrics, geriatric psychiatry, and dementia care. After more than 30 years finding herself happily retired, but not so happily widowed, she decided to begin a new chapter of her life by moving to Wallowa County to join her daughter, Shannon McNerney, Fishtrap's executive director. Kat is grateful for the kindness of the community and awestruck by the majesty of the landscape. She never tires of watching the deer and quail that visit her yard. Thanks to Fishtrap, she is rediscovering the joy of diving in and playing with words. Welcome, Kat Johnson.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's an honor to be here. I think it's kind of interesting that the women's history and 3 generations, and so guess who gets to be the old bride? I love it. So I just have a little lyric essay. It's a little bit whimsical, and it's the kind of thing that happens in your head when you get to be my age. So this is called Happy Birthday, Bobby Odell. I breathe in the happy aroma of brewing coffee and twist the blinds open on the peach blush of a promising new day. And what am I thinking about? Memory. Webster's defines it, songwriters romanticize it, neuroscientists analyze it. I wonder where in the world it's gone when I see someone I recognize in Safeway and want to hide behind the produce display because I can't for the life of me remember their name. So I've been thinking about memory a lot lately, specifically about my own. It's bizarre that I have an existential fear of forgetting my debit card PIN, yet I can remember my second cousin's phone number from 1962. It's even more bizarre that I can remember random birth dates of people I knew from grade school and high school, even though I have had absolutely no contact with them since. For example, my playmate Janet's birthday was January 5th. Connie from our grade school carpool was born on February 11th. Jeannie from high school was born on March 29th, and on and on. As the day dawns, something dawns on me as well, an unbidden memory that startles me like a spider dropping from the ceiling and landing on my nose. Today is September 12th. This is Bobby Odell's birthday. Where in the world did that come from? First of all, why would September 12th have any significance? It's been 22 years and 1 day since we watched in horror as the Twin Towers fell. It's been 5 years and 1 day since I adopted my cat, Lucy. Of course, those are about September 11th, not September 12th. Furthermore, I wonder why, of all people, would I think of Bobby Odell? There have certainly been more significant people named Bob in my life. The Bob that I adored when I was 18, who became a lifelong friend. The Bob from a dismal decade in my adult life that I desperately wish I could forget. But Bobby Odell? I haven't thought about him in over 60 years. Yet, here he is. It was the late 1950s. It was junior high. The era of ponytails, poodle skirts, and the earth-shaking emergence of a guy named Elvis. The neighborhood gang transitioned from playing kick the can in our quiet suburban street to staying inside and watching American Bandstand. Girls got their first bras. Boys suddenly had voices that cracked and unexpectedly changed octaves. The appearance of zits became a trauma of major proportions. Enter Bobby Odell. A new family moved into our neighborhood. My January 5th Janet and I were intrigued by the new neighbors. Their surname was Fry. The father, Paul, was a pharmacist. We thought that was impressive, as was the fact that they had 5 children. No one else in the neighborhood had more than 3. The mother, Lois, had a nasty case of varicose veins and always looked more than a little tired. Janet and I decided she could really use our help. We became self-appointed big sisters to Diane and Darlene, her 3-year-old twins. We each adopted our own twin to read to, take for walks, and bathe in bubble bath and baby shampoo. The other 3 children in the family were boys. Dickie was 4, David was 5, and then there was Bobby. His last name was Odell, not Fry. Paul was his stepfather. He was Lois' son from a previous marriage. Bobby was the same age as Janet and I. Unlike the pack of 10 and 11-year-old male urchins that roamed the block looking for ways to torment us, here was an actual flesh and blood adolescent boy. Teenage hormones bloomed like spring tulips. Of course, we both developed crushes on Bobby simply because he was there. As I recall, he had hazel eyes and a crew cut and smelled faintly of Clearasil. The Frys gave a party when Bobby turned 13. His birthday was September 12th, 4 days before mine. There was cake and ice cream and dancing to 45s and one other thing. It became evident that if Bobby had a crush on anyone, it was Janet, not me. Maybe because she tanned and I freckled, or because she had big blue eyes, among other assets. Or maybe just because. I was disappointed, but not really surprised. I wished him a happy birthday anyway. If nothing else, I was polite. We moved the following spring. Janet and I remained friends. I never saw Bobby Odell again. Why? Across a span of 1,000 miles in 65 years, unbidden, is he here, before I've even had my first cup of coffee? It's about memory. Memory is ironic. My heart, more than my brain, refuses to forget how it felt to hold my babies for the first time, say goodbye to my parents for the last time, or finally find myself truly and forever in love. My cranium, on the other hand, was intentionally implanted with volumes of academic factoids that I have trouble recalling no matter how hard I try. Yet, with no effort at all, out of the depths of some stagnant brain fog, behold, it's none other than Bobby Odell. Memory is mysterious. Long-term memories may be buried more securely than recent ones, but they're all tucked snugly somewhere into folds of gray matter. Triumphant, tragic, silly, sad, little proofs of life. I wonder how they're curated. Memory is fickle. It plays hard to get. Ask anyone who has amnesia or Alzheimer's. Reminiscing is like having a free streaming service, but there's a catch. Unpleasant, unwanted memories can surface without warning. Ask anyone who suffers from PTSD. Memory is a weaver. Like my imaginary friend the spider, it spins a gossamer web that captures the spice of everyday life. It snares tiny snippets of sensory input and feelings and traps them until some random prompt feather dusts them into freedom. My web harbors a hodgepodge of images evoked by the scent of cigarette smoke and Chanel No. 5, incense and candle wax, fresh hay and horse liniment, grass clippings, gardenias, garlic, and gasoline. I suppose Bobby Odell has been hiding out there too. Memory is precious. As I ponder its intricacy, I feel unexpected gratitude. I am keenly aware that memory is why I instantly recognize the unique smell of a new puppy or the feel of the velvety spot between a horse's nostrils. It's the reason I don't have to refer to the owner's manual every time I start my car. My mind delights in recalling the spritz of lawn sprinklers in the park on a July morning and the deep blue silence of a starry December night. It can conjure up the sensation of dipping my toes in turquoise seawater as warm as my blood, or breathing in mountain air cold enough to freeze the hairs in my nose. It would rather not unearth the pain of broken bones, broken promises, and broken hearts. My memory is a collection of raggedy file folders stuffed with first dates, funerals, final exams, Shakespeare sonnets, Saturday cartoons, and no school snow days with my children. There's a whole cabinet just for Christmas mornings. Back to this particular Saturday morning. I savor my first sip of coffee. I pet Lucy, the 5-year plus 1-day cat. I gaze in awe at the sight of the rising sun bedazzling patches of snow on the nearby mountaintops. I become acutely aware that these impressions are becoming embryonic memories, tiny treasures being tucked away to enjoy again another day. I'm done analyzing for now. I don't understand how it all works. I never will. Maybe that's as it should be. The mystery enhances the wonder. I look forward to what the new day will bring, and I wonder if some other unexpected vision from the distant past might pop in for a visit. The possibility makes me smile, just a little, and I think, happy birthday, Bobby Odell, wherever you are.
I like how you invoked gratitude, because I wanted to tell you we are right in the middle of the big read right now. I don't know how many of you picked up a copy of the Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude by Ross Gay, but there have been some interesting conversations already, and just last week we had Oregon Poet Laureate Anis Mojgani here, who says, "These poems always make me cry," which I thought was really endearing. They really touch him. Jennifer Hobbs had a great conversation with high school students at the Wallowa City Library last week, and the kids were just, the students, the young people were super into these poems. I hope that you pick up a copy at the library or at the book loft and join in. I want to tell you about a couple upcoming events. For all of you folks out there in internet land, especially if you're in La Grande, tomorrow at 2 p.m. there's going to be a book discussion on this. You should show up and hang out with Carrie Bushman and crew at the Cook Memorial Library. Then this coming Tuesday right here, March 5th, Lauren McDonald, who read at Fireside last month, is leading a workshop titled Healing Power, Wisdom of Gratitude. She's generously offered her time to offer this free workshop. Are you prepared to say a sentence or two about what it is?
Sure. It's an experimental conversation with plant medicine, movement, and altar making. And yeah, it's exploring what gratitude feels like and how we access it in our bodies.
Thanks, Lauren. It's a free workshop. There are 5 spots available. You can register for it just by, if you go by one of those QR codes, you could register for it tonight or contact me or when you get home. We'd love to have you there. That's next Tuesday. Then we've got something next weekend for students 6 to 12, not grade 6 to 12, but ages 6 to 12. It's titled Write It and Read It, a youth theater workshop with attitude and gratitude. Over the course of 2 days, this group of students will create, practice, and perform an original play. It takes place, June will like the sound of this, at the South Fork Grange in Lostine. And it is also free, but you have to register the kiddos at fishtrap.org to come. So if you know any youngsters who just want to express themselves and through that, please do so. And then finally, there are all sorts of other things going, but the big read finale is Tuesday, March 12, so a week from Tuesday, at the OK Theater with the author, Ross Gay. It's kind of a big deal. And our writer-in-residence, Jason Graham, also known as Mostly Water, is opening it up. So You can get tickets at fishtrap.org. Adults, it's $15. If you're a fish trapper, it's $12.50. And students, $5. So it should be a grand event at the OK Theater Tuesday the 12th. I hope you can come. And if you need one of these books, let me know. Okay, let's get to our second reader. Raised in the wilds of the San Fernando Valley, Randi Movich could not wait to leave the neighborhood for ocean swims, camping, backpacking, and skiing. That wanderlust brought her to a life of work and discovery in France, a Peace Corps assignment in West Africa, 6 months in Central and South America, graduate school in Idaho, a stint in Eugene working at the Western Environmental Law Center, then to Guinea for 2 years working with traditional healers and midwives. Ashland, Oregon came next, and finally right here to Wallowa County. Almost 10 years as a nurse, Randi's main writing assignment these days is documenting chart notes, if you know what that means. But after attending Fishtrap's outpost on the Snake River program, she rediscovered her desire to write and wander again. Please welcome Randi Movich.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. And thank you, Mike. And really, I was not cursing your name, but just sort of, kind of. I think this will sound a little familiar to Lauren. Detura, seer of the unseen. The plant card chooses me. My hand reaches to cut the deck in the middle, but hesitates. The reasonable middle. I am reasonable. My hand is doing its own thing and takes only 7 or 8 cards, then flips the card on top of the deck. Holy Mother. The overside card emblazoned with black and white line drawings of skull, scorpion, stars, crown, and death plant Detura. No pretty, colorful, your life will be like spring plant card. Urgently, I flipped through the book with accompanying descriptions. Skimming Detura's page, the words fly, razor-sharp fragments of reckoning. Queen of the desert, dark death, moon plant, reflecting light into the shadows. Struggle with the unknown, vast transformation. The death plant Detura is your lifeline. Really? Strength, power, courage, poison. Don't take lightly or engage without clear intention. Detura states boundaries, but expands us. Detura makes her case at the very moment when I am waning, recoiling, unsure, teetering on the proverbial cliff edge. The path once clear, now muddied with the impending switch from dream gears to your plane ticket is booked, now too close to the thing I wanted most. Large white, yellow, pink, purple, fragrant trumpet-shaped flowers and spiny capsule fruit stalk me. Her relentless psychotropic alkaloids, atropine, scopolamine, hyoscyamine seep into a fantasy that we have never held hands, much less kissed. Detura's herbaceous sprawl entangles and captures memories, and I am easily transported to a warm-baked mud brick hut, rusting tin roof, and crumbling concrete steps leading to Detura's open doors of perception. On the neatly swept earthen courtyard are carefully strewn seeds, leaves, and bark. All manner of plants on bright blue UN refugee tarps, grain bags, clear plastic, and bright colorful fabrics. Bits and pieces of chopped, drying, healing matter encased in clay and termite mound binding to keep from rot. An ancient knowledge quilt sewn from long days in the sun, choosing, collecting, and coercing plant souls. Detura, unknown to me, knocks on my door at 6 a.m. in the form of Marie's nephew. She nudges this out-of-breath American woman/girl into the tides of the underworld. This is my third birth with Marie Zumanigi, a traditional midwife, herbalist, and friend. We have spent many days in the bush together. I offered to take her on my motorcycle through the mud and rain to the places she usually would take a bush taxi and then walk for several hours. All this for the pleasure of my endless questions, no transport costs, and less walking. We are quite the pair on a dirt bike, me in front, Marie holding on to my waist for dear life, and a mound of bags filled to the rim with plants piled impossibly high, held in place by the grace of a used rubber inner tube. Detura says, loosen your grip on what you know to be reality and shift the borders of what you know to be true and normal. After spending 2 years in the region as a Peace Corps volunteer in my 20s, I returned 10 years later with the Institute of Current World Affairs as a Forest and Society Fellow. Their motto, we supply the oxygen to climb your Everest. My Everest is learning how women use forest plants for reproductive health and how this traditional knowledge is used in public health policies and pharmaceutical development. I also want to learn how farming and resource extraction impact the availability of these plants to healers like Marie. The Institute covers transport, rent, food, insurance, the motorcycle, and an informal ID. Jeff is part of the package. His role evolves from chief spouse to motorcycle maintenance guy, logistician, safety officer, problem solver, and nurse. I should also add, ethnobotany expert on the cultural traditions of palm wine. Detura is a highly poisonous vespertine flowering plant belonging to the nightshade family, commonly known as thornapple, jimsonweed, devil's trumpet, moonflower, devil's weed, and hell's bells. In this dark birth room, there are no bouncy balls, clean sheets, IVs, sterile instruments, incubators, nurses, or doctors. This time, Marie's granddaughter, who she delivered 16 years ago, sits on 3 large leaves sipping green plant liquid from a dried gourd. She gets up and down as she tries to coax new life from the safety of her womb to the outside chaos. But as the hours pass, Marie is worried. The birth is taking too long. More relatives come into the hut to hold down the granddaughter's arms and legs as another woman pushes with all her might on her upper abdomen. Perhaps it is the funeral procession outside of Marie's house that changes the mood. She starts to badger her granddaughter, to push, and now I count 8 women holding the screaming, struggling girl down. Marie asks me to help, but I freeze. I'm looking into the tear-rimmed eyes of her sister, and we wonder silently if Marie has gone too far with stick in hand. Her version of love, her fear of the known. She's determined to turn this birth hell around as Devil Detura waits. Not this time. In one last furious, frenzied moment, Marie's great-grandson greets his relatives with cries and rejoicing. There is much blood, more oxytocin, and plant medicine. Ancient knowledge meets modern pharmaceuticals. A beloved child and granddaughter becomes a beloved mother to a baby boy named Albert Calavia, after his great-grandfather. This day, I dream of becoming a nurse and returning with my training and, quote, expertise to make it less frightening, to have better outcomes. But how do you plan something you cannot imagine? Detura knows. She says if you are letting go of a familiar reality like your home or your job or some stable structure you count on, prickly and mysterious, Detura will not hold your hand, but stands by, courage rippling into you, shaking your bones, releasing your dreams into a new world of possibility. Shortly after the birth of Marie's grandson, I wake to nausea. My first clue that collecting fertility plants with the magical green juices infused into my pores is no laughing matter. Malaria while pregnant also opens a door of sickness that I have never seen, and I'm scared. As the plane ascends at a 90-degree angle, I look down on the red dirt tarmac, holding a bag to my face, and pray that the wheels clear the forest below and dream of new possibilities. I am labeled as a high-risk patient even though there is no evidence that the baby has malaria. My daughter, Dawn Mist, is born in the hospital with some drama, but little fear. Tishra and Rosie are born in the kitchen in a kiddie pool with the aid of a midwife. Motherhood pushes and expands, the best and the hardest days. I learn about breastfeeding, midwifery, become a birth doula, a La Leche League leader. I keep dreaming. Commuting around the region in the snow and ice, I earn my nursing degree. A supportive and kind husband keeps us in food and warmth. We joke that he keeps us alive, one stick of kindling at a time. Our foundation from which we feel confident to fly. 20 years since I said goodbye to Marie. She passed away many years ago, but her photo still graces my wall for 25 years. She holds a plateful of cataplasma herbal plants enmeshed in fine clay. Her granddaughter sits next to her holding Albert as her neighbor apprentice muses, strong women looking at me with questioning eyes and smiles. Since that dramatic birthday, I have thought about applying to Doctors Without Borders, or Médecins Sans Frontières, the humanitarian medical organization started by French doctors and journalists in the early 1970s, and winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in 1999. They work in 70 countries around the world with refugees, prisoners, with those abandoned in the shuffle and lawlessness from colonialism, communism, capitalism, war, religious zealotry, proxies, pawns, climate change, and chance. I am part of these isms. I wrestle with my inner voice. How do I think it is even possible for me to impact the great tide of injustice that threatens to drown us all? But Marie keeps looking. She wonders if I will come back to honor her. And then there is the experience of a 16-year-old girl from South Sudan who also wonders. She sees her parents murdered in front of her right after they witness her gang raped by 5 men wielding semi-automatics, her village torched to the ground. Detura cajoles her back to the space between life and death. Bleeding and broken, she walks 3 days in the blazing sun to the border, where a new living hell awaits in the form of a refugee camp. There are no cures here, no one to hold her hand. The offering of a Band-Aid in the form of water, food, emergency contraception, and treatment against HIV and other STIs. How many unspeakable traumas will we witness until our own souls break? Detura has impeccable timing. She settles my teeter-totter mind before I jump on a plane to New York for the Doctors Without Borders orientation. She encourages the visionary deep inside to keep climbing our Everest, to get out of bed, to look in the mirror and like what you see, to create, to raise a child, to tend plants, to leave, to love those who seem unlovable, to heal trauma and grief. This sacred nightshade allows for the visions in your dreams to come into waking life. I think Leonard Cohen knows Detura. In Anthem, he sings, "Ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." Detura demands, don't forget your magic. Even if lost in the noise, you can still sail into the desert sands of this windy moonlight queen. Not a transformation, nor a revelation, but a relation to the bits and scraps of all of us swirling, collecting stardust, settling in an unknown land, asking other bits and scraps to join in a floating sea of humanity. Detura is not playing around. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. All right, before we get to our final third featured reader, I want to, it was interesting that Randy talked about the birth of Dawn Mist. Dawn Mist is now working with Fishtrap a little bit as a contractor on the world of social media. Yeah. So if you follow Fishtrap or want to follow Fishtrap on Facebook or Instagram, or those are the two main ones, you can see some of the work that Dawn Mist is doing with and for Fishtrap. It's pretty exciting times. And also, we've been talking about, Randy mentioned it in the bio, going to Fishtrap's outpost on the Snake River program. Having attended that, well, our next reader leads the raft trip. So it's been kind of nice. There are spots available for this coming summer's outpost on the Snake River and Hell's Canyon trip. It takes place September 3 or 4 through 8. And you can learn more about it at fishtrap.org. It's always a blast. Do you recommend the trip? No. It's a good time. From a young age, Sarah Petrillo was groomed to be an outdoor educator. Ta-da. She spent the summers of her youth frolicking around the Wallowa Lake United Methodist Campground while her mom ran family camps. Soon, her mom discovered that Sarah was a pretty great kid wrangler and put her in charge of campfires, games, and taste-testing desserts in the camp kitchen. While at camp, she was lucky enough to attend some summer Fishtrap youth workshops, which inspired some of her first creative writing. At the age of 19, Sarah followed her love of the outdoors and became a river guide at Winding Waters River Expeditions. Some of our favorite folks. While on the river, she spent countless nights listening to guides tell fantastical, albeit somewhat exaggerated tales of whitewater and adventure, and eventually began telling some whoppers of her own. I put that part in. She now works as an experiential education program coordinator at the University of Puget Sound, where she leads college students on outdoor adventures. On any given day, you can find her kayaking, skiing, or hiking around her home base in Snoqualmie, Washington, where she continues to be inspired and utterly humbled by the rivers and mountains that surround her. Please welcome Sarah Petrillo.
Thank you, Mike. It's an honor to be here and read alongside these incredible women. This is a short story that I wrote about a really bad decision that I made. I call it The Current of Chaos. I could hear the waterfall roaring below me. It was April 3rd. Spring had just begun, and the river was high from the first big snowmelt of the season. That day, I took out my biggest boat, the Nirvana, a 9-foot tank of a kayak that glides over big waves and gracefully covers up all my mistakes. I only take out my nirvana when I'm feeling scared or lazy. Today, I was definitely feeling scared, but mostly just happy to be on the water, because this was my 24th birthday party. I hadn't ever spent a birthday on the river, but I couldn't go out in a traditional sense. COVID had taken away the happy-go-lucky 20s that I had been promised by all the sitcoms I watched in college. Instead of securing exciting job opportunities, spontaneous travel, and weekend bar hopping, I was working a minimum wage retail job, living with my parents, and spending most of my time being a self-proclaimed public health hero by staying inside and binge-watching Netflix. All of that considered, it didn't really seem like there was much to celebrate. During lockdown, I found myself spending hours reminiscing, wishing for a time in the past when things were, well, better, or really just anything other than what they were. I couldn't see my friends, I couldn't go to concerts, I couldn't pass a joint or a handle of whiskey. I couldn't even show my whole face. Weirdly, I had more freedom in high school than I had now. Back then, everything seemed new and fun and monumental, even my birthdays. You get your sweet 16. At 18, you become an adult. At 20, you depart your teens. At 21, you have your first drink. But what happens after that? Does anyone but your mom care anymore? So, sitting above that waterfall, I decided to reclaim my 20s. And for my first act of reclamation, I would run Hewsome Falls. Typically, before running a waterfall, a smart, safety-conscious kayaker would get out of their boat, walk downstream, and scout the waterfall to pick out a safe line to run. However, as a newly matured, experienced 24-year-old, I decided that I didn't need to scout. Honestly, because if I did, I would probably chicken out. I should have taken it as a sign when my friends, who are much more experienced kayakers than me, decided not to run it. As I watched them walk away, boats and bodies high and dry within the safe bounds of shore, I had a strong feeling that I should follow them. But I shook it off. With the integrity of my 20s at stake, there is no turning back now. I peeled out into the river with all the false confidence I could muster. Facing downstream, the river dropped into an abyss of misty chaos. As the current pulled me closer to the horizon line, I struggled to fight off every instinct that told me this was wrong. The adrenaline had turned my arms to jello and set my heart rate racing. In an attempt to calm my nerves, I took 2 deep breaths and zoned into my target. A little ledge about 2 feet wide that, when hit at the right angle, would lead me out and over the veil of the waterfall and drop me safely into the foamy pool below. But as I approached the lip of the falls, I started to second-guess myself. Was it more to the left or right, or was it even visible yet? And when should I time my paddle stroke, and was I going fast enough? Before I knew it, I was careening over the edge of the falls, way off my intended line, plunging straight down into the pool below me. I met the water with so much force that my kayak rocketed back up the opposite way, and for a moment I saw the sky, and the next I was underwater. I don't know exactly when I realized that I was stuck under the veil of the waterfall. Maybe it was the unrelenting sound of my kayak being pounded by a downpour akin to a fire hose. Or maybe it was when my paddle was ripped out of my hands by the sheer force of the water. Whatever it was, I eventually realized that I was totally screwed and there was no hope of saving face. So I reached out to do what every kayaker dreads, pull my skirt. I had pulled my skirt many, and I mean many, many times before, and it was always a painful thing to do. But helpless under the veil, I had no choice but to leave the safe cocoon of my little plastic kayak to unleash my body to the harsh, cold, and unforgiving hydraulics of the river. Usually, and by that I mean every time before this, My trusty life jacket and I floated right up to the light of the surface. So you could imagine my surprise when things started to get darker, then really dark, then pitch black. At first I was confused. Was I stuck under my kayak? Why was it so dark? Then my ears started to pop and then hurt, and then my whole head felt like it was going to explode. And it struck me that I was being pulled deep into the river. When you go deep, they tell you to curl up into a tight ball or raise your arms and hands out like a starfish in order to catch the undercurrent that will bring you back up to the surface. But the water was so aerated that I had no purchase. And even if I did, it was so dark that I couldn't tell up from down. There was no use in trying. I was totally suspended in the darkness. The time it would take me to get back to the surface was completely out of my control. At first, I was scared, but then I remembered a conversation that I had with my friend Matt a week prior. People had been here before. The local raft guides call this cold, dark place under the falls Serenity. People may stay here a while. They may even touch the bottom of the river, but they always come back up to the surface and live to tell the story. At the time I laughed, thinking that Serenity was a cheeky name for a truly horrible place. But as I waited there, completely helpless in that cold, dark, hypoxic space, I began to notice how quiet it was, and oddly still for being under a waterfall. At that moment, something strange happened. I felt a huge wave of peace wash over me. I was going to be okay. Maybe it was a lack of oxygen or pressure getting to my head, but for the first moment in months, I felt completely at ease. All of a sudden, I felt the pressure in my skull release. Then sunlight began to trickle through the water. I looked up and was relieved to see the surface above me. Seeing the surface made me realize how out of breath I was, and I panicked. I reached out above me, but the surface was still far out of my grasp. I tried to swim, but still had no purchase. With my lungs feeling like they were going to burst, the river was taunting me, kicking me when I was down. No, she wouldn't let me get off that easy. I was going to move on her time. Finally, I broke through, and the world started moving 1,000,000 miles per hour. As I gasped for air, a rope came flying towards me. My friends were on the shore where I'd left them, ready with their rescue gear. I missed the rope and continued downstream, slamming into rocks and eating facefuls of water. Using the last of the energy I had, I finally made it to shore. At my unfortunate request, my boyfriend had filmed the whole thing. When I watched the video back, I was surprised to see that I was only underwater for 20 seconds. 20 seconds! 20 seconds had never lasted so long or been so excruciating, but in white water, all it takes is 20 seconds to realize your mortality. As I stood by the side of the river, coughing and struggling to repressurize my eardrums, I realized that for my 24th birthday, the river gave me the greatest gift of all, a practice in complete surrender. Something shifted in me while I waited patiently in Serenity. All of the anxiety and frustration of not living up to the expectations I had for my 20s melted away. For the past year, I'd been at the mercy of lockdowns and mandates, a horrifying news cycle, and the grim feeling that at any moment my loved ones could end up alone and dead in the hospital. It was all terrifying, but at the same time so incredibly boring. Faced with a huge crisis, the best thing I could do was nothing. Wait at home and stay inside until it all subsided. It was all completely out of my control. Last summer, while raft guiding on the Salmon River, one of my clients swam a rapid for her first time. After gleefully bouncing and spinning with the current, she hopped back onto my boat and said something that really stuck with me. Swimming whitewater is the perfect amount of loss of control. Although I experienced a little more loss of control than I wanted to under that waterfall, she was right. This whole time, I felt like I was drowning under the weight of restrictions and anxiety and failed expectations. But that day, the river reminded me, or rather forced me, to sit with the discomfort, really sit with it, and surrender myself to uncertainty. Chaos moves like a river. It may plunge you down deep or bash you up against rocks, but it has a current. There is a peace in knowing that the chaos will continue and that you will never be stuck in the same place for long. The one constant of chaos is that it is always moving and leading towards something else. Luckily for me, that day it was leading towards the surface, where I ended up with a greater gratitude for my breath, for my friends who were kindly emptying my boat of water, and for the seemingly mundane life I was blessed to live. I leave you with this, the kayaker's prayer. River, grant me the serenity to accept the swims I cannot change, the courage to send it when I can, and the wisdom to always portage with my friends. Thank you.
Sarah. I've stood there at Houston Falls many times wondering what it was like down there. I'm glad I don't have to live it. Thank you much. And that will not happen if you register for Outpost on the Snake River this September, because you will be with Sarah and she'll take care of you and say no. All right, if you had a great time tonight, thank you for coming down, or even you folks out there in internet land. And if there's a fish right there, if you throw a few bucks in there afterwards, it really helps us out. And you can always hit the Donate Now button at fishtrap.org. It really helps us put on these programs and continue to provide these high-quality experiences. Before we take a break, I just want to tell you who's up for the final Fishtrap Fireside of the season. April is the final one of the season. Celia Harlander, another river guiding person. Yeah, Celia will be here. Rich, the one and only Rich Wanschneider will get up and I'm every once in a while, this is about Fishtrap Fireside is supposed to be celebrating Wallowa County writers and creative writers, but every once in a while we have a special guest, and next month we have a really fantastic person by the name of Juhae Kim. Juhae was born in Korea, and then went to school in Portland, and now lives in London. And she is going to be in Wallowa County next month. And I said, why don't you come and read at Fireside? She said, okay. So we'll have Juhae Kim along with Rich and Celia. So take a break, get something to eat and something to drink, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes.